It's the second last episode of the season, but if you thought that you were getting off light, you don't know Akito very well now, do you? With that said though, hello everybody, welcome back to our weekly Fruits Basket Season 2 discussion video. Today we're here to talk all about episode 24, the penultimate episode, Here You Are. But before we do that, if you haven't done so yet, what are you doing? Hit that sub button. Hit the sub button. Just do the thing. I'm not even gonna start the video till you do it. Did you hit the button? Okay, cool. If you've already hit that button, by the way, maybe consider hitting that join button too. Just, it's there for you if you feel like it, but without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. So this episode is sort of split to me between being about Machi and being about Yuki. Apologies for the vacuum. If you hear a vacuum, my bad. I don't have a lot of time to film this today, so we're just gonna have to deal with that. But this episode is pretty much split, as I said, between Yuki and Machi. And it definitely features other characters, and there's definitely some people that I want to talk about in regards to those two. But Machi and Yuki are the ones that have the most to do this week. Like, they're the characters with the most interesting stuff going on, especially Machi. We never really get to know much about what's going on in Machi's head, so it's nice to actually see behind the curtain and get to know the character a little bit better than, we have in the past. She's always been sort of a mysterious character, so it's nice to get this insight. And we find out, the reason why, a few weeks back when they were picking colors, right? It's like, I want to be I want to be the Black Ranger. I want to be the Pink Ranger, right? Like, when they were picking out the different colors that they would use as, code names for each other in the student council. Yuki asked, hey, Machi, what's your favorite color? And she couldn't answer. And I was so confused by that. I was like, why can't she answer, right? And so when they bring this back up at the start of this week's episode, I'm like, oh yeah, what was that about? And then they ask again, Machi, what's your favorite place? Let's go celebrate New Year's as, the council. What's your favorite place to go? We'll go there. And again, she can't really answer. And at first I was kind of confused as to why. I thought maybe it was the idea that somebody is asking her what her interests are and she's simply just not used to that. And while that might be part of it, I think another big part, as they rightfully point out, is that Machi just doesn't really have preferences. She's not really interested in a whole lot. And her own mother refers to her as dull and like a doll, right? And it's, first of all, it's messed up. But Machi's just not really used to having somebody ask her what her interests are because she doesn't really have any. She's basically just been raised to be the next in line for this big company, so she has all this tremendous weight on her shoulders. And you see how that affected her. All of her life has been dedicated to one thing, and she's become mentally sort of broken because of it. Mentally and emotionally destroyed because of this one singular goal. She's maybe more so emotionally, because mentally she's mostly all there. We do know Machi has a habit of kind of spacing out from time to time, but for the most part, it's more emotionally. She's just very cold and distant, but she recognizes that Yuki too was also very upset, right? And how when people gave him special treatment, he didn't feel good about it. And I think Machi relates to that to an extent. She knows that, she can kind of see her own self within Yuki, this person who is given everything and yet doesn't really feel like they've deserved it and doesn't really feel like people actually care. You know what I mean? That's the vibe that I get from Machi, and I think that's the vibe that she got from Yuki, but she's slowly watching Yuki change over time. And she's starting to wonder, how he's, maybe not how he's changing, but, she's starting to notice that change in him and is just sort of, clocking that, right? She's okay, that's interesting. He's been changing. He's been smiling more often. That's good for him. And you sort of start to see her piece together, how maybe, or rather we start to piece together how maybe Machi might be changing. A perfect example of how Machi views herself can be represented by her room. I've said in these videos before that environmental storytelling is very important. The first time I even really registered that storytelling was so important in terms of the setting, right? Environmental storytelling was from a Super Eye Patch Wolf video. But since then, I've noticed that, you can actually tell a lot about a character, not just through their design, but also through their space, right? What do they keep in their room? That tells you a lot about a character. Not only does it tell you a lot about a character, you can do a lot of world building by just showing it. You know what I mean? Just by demonstrating, this is how this person is, or this is how the world is, by, looking through the lens of what's in the background. And with Machi, you can absolutely tell who she is and how she's feeling on the inside by looking at a room, because girl, your room be messy as hell. Like, that is the messiest room I ever done saw. There is garbage bags everywhere. There's books and clothes all over the damn place. There's dishes piled up in the sink. Her window is broken, and it does lead to a really cool shot of Maki with the broken window, reflecting how she's feeling on the inside. And in terms of just using environmental storytelling, if we're looking at the room as a representation of Machi herself, I think I called her Maki once, my bad. But as a representation of Machi herself, if you look at it, it kind of works perfectly, right? It's messy, everything's messy, things are discarded, broken, and you can kind of piece that on to Machi, right? She feels like her mind is a mess, her heart feels discarded, and in terms of her emotion, she feels broken. She feels like a doll. It doesn't really feel human. It feels like she's a void. The room is a perfect representation of that. However, it's interesting, as I noted earlier, that Machi might also be changing, and I want to kind of bring that back in what is easily the cutest damn thing I've ever seen. Well, okay, maybe not ever seen. FruBa, even though it is a very emotionally draining show, there is a tremendous amount of cute-ass moments, and this is one of them. Machi isn't sure why she's going to the student council meetup, but she's going anyway. And when she gets there, Yuki's waiting. Yuki's like, oh, cool, I was worried that maybe I got here a little too early, but here you are. That's awesome. Title drop, by the way. Here you are. That's great. And I'm like, oh my god. First of all, Yuki looking great. And Machi, that coat that Machi's wearing is adorable. But as our girl Furu points out, why are you wearing your school uniform? It's like, oh yeah, I didn't notice that. That's weird. Why is she doing that? I think maybe just she doesn't really feel the need to buy other clothes, I guess. Interesting thought for maybe another day. But yeah, that's an interesting observation. But when Machi arrives, she sees Yuki and she gets a little flustered. So she's definitely starting to feel some things towards Yuki, you know? It's definitely not a one-sided. I think both characters are starting to notice there's a pull there. Right? And so Machi kind of gets flustered and she trips over her own feet. She literally falls for this dude. Literally falls for him. And all her stuff from her bag gets kind of tossed about. And Yuki's like, why do you have a bottle opener? You know what I mean? It's just in fairness, I'm like, Yuki, don't ask questions. Just when a girl trips, you just pick up the stuff and you give it back, right? Don't ask questions. And even Machi's like, I don't know. I just threw things in a bag and I left. And he's like, oh, is this the maple leaf I gave you? She's like, no. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, I just, I thought maybe it could have been special to you, I guess. And she's like, it could be. He's like, okay, well, what is it, right? She's so flustered by the fact that he's aware that, he gave her something that she holds precious, right? Now, keep in mind, she said that she doesn't have a preference, right? I think she's starting to have a preference, at the very least, in the people she cares about. I think she's starting to care about Yuki, and by connection, maybe starting to care about the council over time. But we're starting with Yuki, right? Yuki and Kakeru are the two people who she seems to be, these are her preferences, these are her people. She may not be aware of it right now, but that seems to be the way of it. And she probably has a preferences for maple leafs after this, and maybe even the color red, as Kakeru inadvertently is just stumbles upon the two of them wrestling. It was they're doing they're in each other's grill, and Kakeru's like, should I even ask what the hell's going on? Right? He's like, why are you two fighting? But it's cute. It's a side of Machi that we haven't seen. I'm like, Machi Mouse, look at you. You're having fun. Even though I don't think she's registering it as fun. But legitimately a very, very sweet scene. And as I said, I think we're starting to see Machi grow quite a bit as a character. I'm glad that they actually threw this episode in towards the end of the season. Because I feel like it's a good place to leave Machi as a character, for the season. I don't know how long season 3 is going to be, because let's be real, season 3 is absolutely happening. But if it's as long, then great. Then we can spend more time fleshing out Machi. But if it's shorter, like a lot of people seem to be thinking it is, then at the very least, I hope we get 1 or 2 more episodes just fleshing out Machi's character before maybe pairing the two off. Listen, I'm just saying, if Machi and Yuki became a thing, I'm not against that. In fact, I'm very much for that. I'd like to spend the last little bit of the video, though, talking about New Year's Eve, because it's New Year's Eve. This is the second New Year's Eve we have spent with this cast, and I think this one is certainly more impactful, shall we say. So has more impact, packs a little bit more of a wallop than the last time. For Yuki has decided that he's gonna stop blaming others. He's not really interested in blaming others for things going wrong in his life anymore. So he's been making the rounds, Yuki's been apologizing where needed. I think maybe an apology for Kyo would be nice, but I don't know if we're quite there yet. That said, Yuki makes the mistake of telling Akito, how he feels. And Akito don't like that. Akito responds in kind by cracking a bottle over my boy's head. Now listen, I don't have... Is it wrong that when that happened, I was like, oh, yeah. Like, I was shocked that I was like, yeah, I kind of saw that coming. The instant Yuki started telling the instant that Yuki said, I forgive you, to Akito, I was like, ooh, Akito not gonna like that. Akito definitely not gonna like that. Akito is a hot mess in so many ways, and at this point, I'm just like, every time they're on screen, I get hype, because with Akito comes that top tier, that delicious drama. I hate them, but that's because I'm supposed to. You know what I mean? Like, they're such a brilliant character. I love when Akito's on screen, because I love to hate Akito. So seeing Yuki not just apologize, but forgive, I was like, damn, Yuki, you are asking for an ass whooping. And Yuki doesn't necessarily get an ass whooping, but he does get a bottle broken over his head. And thank God. I was, the one thing I'll say is, like, the biggest reason why I gasped, because I did the, like, you bitch, right? Like, I was like, how dare you? But, like, when I did it was mostly because the way that Yuki was holding his face, it covered the eye. So I was like, oh God, no. Like, for a second, I thought Akito cracked the bottle over Yuki's eye. And I was like, you asshole! Like, I was like, oh my God, like, please, no. Thankfully, no. It did crack Yuki upside the head, but not in the eye. Which, like, obviously, thank God, right? But Akito, at this point, I'm like, there's no real forgiveness for Akito, at least as far as I'm concerned. I think the interesting thing is that Yuki apologizes and forgives, but doesn't forget. And I think that that's a very important lesson that I think is going to go over some folks. And I hope not. I hope it sticks. Like, the idea that you can forgive somebody for things that they've done, but you can never quite forget. And that's not, like, being emotionally cold. It's actually being mentally quite smart, because you're protecting yourself. Yuki's like, I forgive you for everything you've done, but I can never come back to you again. Like, I can never return to your side. I'll never be there, like, as your partner again, because what you did, even though I forgive you for what you did screwed me up emotionally and physically, by the way. So I can never go back to you, but I do forgive you. And I think that's an interesting lesson, and it shows such maturity for Yuki. And Yuki this season has grown exponentially. Like, if season 1 was about Kyo, season 2 is about Yuki. Like, it's about, like, growing. Like, each season, like, really pushed, like, how this character is going to grow over time. And I think like, season 1 for Kyo, where Kyo ends up at the end of season 1 is insane, like, given his progression. And same thing with Yuki. Where Yuki goes in terms of his character, how far he's come is crazy. But as you can probably see by the screenshot I've been using, this scene, I was shocked for like a second, and then immediately Aya made everything better, which thank God. Aya is another character who's grown quite a bit, but Aya, like, basically stands up for Yuki, and I was surprised, right? In the moment, everybody was shocked, and thank God for Kureno, by the way. Because Kureno's like, nope, like just like grabs Akito with like a full Nelson, like no, get the hell out of here, like no. And I was really thankful for that because it looked like Akito was going to like go at Yuki with the broken bottle. I was like, is Akito trying to kill Yuki? Oh my god. So Kureno jumps in. And as Kureno jumps in, that's when Ai is just like, Yuki! Like, runs over, like, are you okay? Because I think everybody just took a second to register what happened, right? Because, and that is very real. Like, when something happens, like, where, like, you're in a room and then suddenly, like, somebody hits somebody else, like, you don't immediately leap into action. You sort of have to be like, whoa, what just happened, right? So, like, the whole room had to be like, whoa, what the hell just happened? I'm pretty sure I saw Kisa cry, which is like, how dare you make Kisa cry? But I was like, I'm pretty sure everybody was just like shocked for a second, right? That's when Aya jumped in, and Aya's just like, Yuki! Like, I will protect you, my brother! The promises we made when we looked at the sunset, and Yuki's like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But yeah, Yuki's like, I'm fine, relax, I'm fine. Which is like, God, Yuki, like, just let Aya be there as the big bro, okay? Give the man his due. And I love that Aya's even, like, waiting outside of Hatori's office, like, waiting to make sure that Yuki's okay. And when they say, like, your brother's ridiculous, Aya's like, did you call? Right? He, like, throws the door open. I love Aya. Aya's the man. And I have some news for you. Aya, you may now take the number 2 husbando spot. For number 1 has been bumped down 2 whole spaces. We'll get into why in a second. But welcome back to the number 1 husbando spot, Hatori. Hatori needs to chill. Hatori needs to chill. When he like took off like the like he took off whatever it was that he's wearing, and he does it like he does like this like thing, and I'm like, hey, easy. I don't have enough water in this cup for this. I'd be parched out here, guys. I'd be parched out here. Yes, I really did just take a sip. Okay, yeah, like your boy be thirsty. Hatori be making people thirsty. But yeah, Hatori was in. I think it's the fact that Hatori's in prime husbando mode, plus something that Shigure says that we'll get into that has bumped Hatori back up to number 1. Listen, Mayu is my in-universe like counterpart. You know, we can all agree on that. But if she's my in-universe counterpart, I don't know what I was saying by saying like I'll give her Hatori. No, if you're my in-universe counterpart, Mayu, we will split Hatori. If Teach is my in-universe counterpart, then we could split Hatori. Okay, so Hatori is back to being my number 1 husbando. Shigure, I still think is a bit more of an interesting character, even though they're both very interesting, but Shigure is interesting in as much as he's my, like, nefarious husbando, okay? Like, they're all 3 of them are my husbando, right? Shigure is my nefarious husbando, Ai is my ridiculous husbando, and Hatori is just my sweet husbando, you know? Like, and Hatori in this moment, in this episode rather, is great, because he tells Shigure, like, you should really be in there keeping an eye on Yuki, because he's probably gonna need you. And Shigure's like, oh, really? You seem to still feel really indebted to Yuki. And I thought that was really interesting, because I was like, what are you talking about, right? Like, I was, in my head, I'm like, why would he feel indebted to Yuki? And I'm like, oh, about erasing his friend's memories, I guess, maybe? And that is what it is. Like, Hatori never let that go. Like, erasing, like, the one good thing from Yuki's life at that time. And it's part of the reason why Hatori keeps a careful eye on Yuki and the gang, right? Because he feels responsible for a lot of some of the negativity that has infested them. And again, with Yuki on his whole forgiveness thing, he says, like, I'm sorry, right? He tells Hatori, I'm sorry that I put that on you. I was a kid, you know. I wasn't really thinking in terms of like what's best for the Soma estate and all that stuff, and I just didn't want to lose the one good thing, but I put that on you, and I kind of even blamed you for a bit, and I shouldn't have. That was selfish of me, and I'm sorry. And Hatori, you could see the weight come off Hatori's shoulders when Yuki said that. So even though I don't think Yuki necessarily needed to apologize for that, because it's not even like Hatori did anything wrong. Hatori was just doing his job. But it's nice to have that moment for Hatori, like to see the weight lifted off his shoulders and just see how much Hatori really cares. Like, he definitely operates as like a big member, like one of Akito's right hands, but he's never come off as evil, you know? And to an extent, it seems like he would also be kind of happy if the curse broke too. And I loved also, like, wait, are you dating Mayu again? And Shigure's like, no. I don't even know why you would say that. Right? Like, no, I'm just thought about Mayu, that's all. Like, you could tell, like, Shigure's like, oh shit, I don't want him to know that I'm playing matchmaker over here. But why did Shigure fall 2 spots in the husbando bracket? I feel like a lot of you have that question. Listen, Shigure is still my husbando, it's just now he's 3rd place instead of 1st. But it's because of a line. He meets up with Haru and he says this line that made me go like, no, didn't like that. Didn't like that at all. And he says, Akito too. Akito should just teach them all a lesson already. And like, yikes, what the holy hell does that mean, Shigure? Like, Haru is just out here trying to live his best life. You know, he's trying to get back with the woman of his dreams, who Rin is also great in this episode, by the way. She has a fun moment with Toru. But it's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like that line really grossed me out. And I was like, you know what, man? I'm going back. You know what, man? I'm taking my stuff and I'm going back to Hatori. Damn it. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm taking my stuff and I'm leaving. Because, like, that line disgusted me. I'm like, Shigure, you better have a damn good explanation as to why you want Akito to teach them a lesson. I thought you were on the side of the angels, my dude. Like, I thought you were like a Sherlock type, where like, yeah, you a bit nefarious to get to a good end goal. You know, I thought Shigure was on the side of the angels, but I don't know how I feel about that line, man. That line really bugged me. Like, in a good way, obviously, because it made me intrigued. But at the same time, I'm like, ooh, Shigure, you have fallen. You're still my husbando, because you do be fine, and I do enjoy the nefarious shit. But yeah, you gotta fall. You gotta fall. 2 whole spots. 2 whole spots down. Shigure ending the season by falling. But yeah, it's, I don't know. It's an interesting line. I'm curious what the hell's gonna happen next season. I'm curious what the hell's gonna happen next week. But enough about Shigure. Last thing I want to mention, Kyotoru. Kyoru. And absolutely peak form. Oh my god. When Toru walks in to the house and she's like, look, I bought a new scarf. I was like, first of all, my girl, you look adorable. You look adorable all the damn time, Toru. You absolute queen. Like, every time Toru does anything, I'm just like, yeah, that's right. Like, I'm like Toru's hype man. I'm like, yeah, that's right, Kyo. You see your girl? She look great. You should tell her how great she looks. Adorable thing. She's my daughteru. You know what I mean? I'm just like Toru. I be out here for Toru. Toru the girl. Toru best girl. You know what I mean? Like, Toru's great. So, like, when she showed up with the scarf, I was like, look at my girl. She looks adorable as hell. And they be flirting hard this week. Like, and when I say hard, I mean they be flirting hard. And it's so noticeable. Like, when Kyo's like, oh, like you have pom-poms on the scarf, you're gonna end up hitting somebody when you turn around. And Toru's like, oh yeah? And like whips like the one pom-pom into Kyo, and he's like, oi. Right? And I'm like, hey. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, the Kyoru ship. The ship is strong. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, this ship don't just got cannons. This ship got like high-powered engines and shit. This ship is strong. I'm here for the ship. It's glorious. Also worth noting, they both spend New Year's together, which I love. And Toru asks Kyo what he's wishing for New Year's. And Kyo says, like, I'm not gonna tell you, because like if I tell you, it won't come true. And Toru's like, oh yeah, that's right. And then Toru thinks about what she wants for New Year's, right? And she said last time that her wish was for Yuki and Kyo to start getting along. Now, in fairness, that hasn't quite worked out the way I think Toru really wanted, but we have gotten pretty close, you know? Like, we're getting closer and closer to that. So I think by wishing for the curse, it's probably a good sign. I don't necessarily know if that means the curse is super broken already. I doubt it. Like, I don't think, like, it's going to be that easy to break the curse. I think it's going to be incredibly difficult. But I am hoping that the curse does get broken, because I agree with Toru. A part of me is wondering if maybe the curse won't necessarily get broken, but maybe if the curse will just be, like, maybe if just, like, instead of breaking the curse, they can just, like, make Akito not a jackass. I doubt that. I feel like you're going to have to break the curse in order to get that to happen, but we'll see. I don't know. I'm interested to see what's going to happen next week, though. The finale of this season, not the whole show. because I'm like, I know some people are like, are we gonna get a season 3? They already confirmed they're adapting the whole thing. So I'm like, yes, we're getting a season 3. I'm just wondering how many episodes it is. If it's 13, like so many people are saying, I'm not gonna lie, I'll be a little sad, because I don't really want the show to end. So if it's 13, that means like final season, right? But I don't know. I do know that there's like an after story that Takia Sensei has made like an after story for FruBa, sort of like the Harry Potter epilogue, I guess. Like, people have told me like it's like the Harry Potter epilogues. It's kind of like that, but for FruBa. So like, I kind of want that. Like, I kind of want like FruBa, but like after, like you see like what happens after that. You could do that. Like, you could make like a spin-off, like a whole season of that. I don't know how long the manga is, but I mean, I'd be up for that. I kind of just don't want it to end, if I'm honest. I don't really want it to end. But with that said, everybody, that is going to wrap up today's video here. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to boop that up snoot and share if you care. And of course, as always, I have to give a big, big thank you to the good folks in the T Squadron. Look at these beautiful people. Look at all of these beautiful names. And hey, if you would like to join these beautiful people, there are now 2 ways to do so. The first is by hitting that first link in the description to check out our Patreon page. And the second, for just a little bit more, is by hitting that join button right next to the sub button to get yourself a badge next to your name and some emotes to use in the comments and premieres. And if you consider that, that would be super, super appreciated. Genuinely, it helps me out tremendously. Cannot stress that enough. It is a huge, huge help. So if you're even thinking about it, thank you very much. But with that said, everybody, I'm going to wrap up today's video here. I gotta go get ready. I have a doctor's appointment, so I better go get to it. But until next time, you stay classy, AniTube, and wash your dang hands.